turn to Colossians 1, verse 28. He is the one we proclaim, admonishing and teaching everyone with all wisdom, so that we may present everyone fully mature in Christ.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, sir.
All right, good morning. Glad to see you guys all this morning. Hopefully you've had a good weekend. Hopefully not too hot of a weekend. It got warm there a little bit yesterday if you were out and about in the sun. We had a family reunion yesterday. Several of us were able to get together. Believe it or not, I was an ornery one. I don't think anybody would believe that out of me, right? I bought something called fart spray. And I got a couple of them with that yesterday. That was pretty. It was fun watching their faces. I didn't do it around the food though. That would have been just mean and nasty. But Danny did want to let me know, or wanted to let me know to tell you guys that he does miss you and he loves you. He is up in Coshocton this morning, is where he is preaching in that area. And we'll get started then with our lesson. We have been on Sunday evenings looking at this concept of you and I being made for a mission. And when we first kicked this off, we started talking about that each of us are called to this mission. Every single one of us are called to a certain mission. We all have one big mission, which is to declare the gospel of Christ, go out and tell everyone. But then we all have each individual gifts that He has given us to expand the gospel of Christ. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. But God does have an exciting plan for each and every single one of us. And last week, we looked at, okay, well, since I'm called, what does that mean? What do I do now? And we walked through this question of, what's my mission? What is it that He has called me out to do? And we shared that ultimately our mission is Jesus' mission. And that's got to be our number one priority. That's got to be top-notch first priority in our lives. And when we put Jesus in our first priority, everything else tends to fall into place after Him. Still, it's so easy to get off track. We have competing missions that we looked at last week. We have distractions in our lives. We have comforts that we all enjoy and we don't want to give up. And we lose our focus on what God has taught us out to do. This morning, what I want us to look at is spending some time answering this question this morning is, what is my message? What is the message that I am to go out and share with the rest of the world? What do I say while living on this mission? If you're already a Christian, then this is at the very heart of following Jesus. But maybe you're checking some things out, seeing what this God, church, Jesus thing is all about, kind of getting a feel for it. Then you still need to know that as you try to figure all this stuff out, whether you will or if you won't accept the mission that God has set us out for. And that's crucial to being a true follower of Christ. Now, when we are talking about sharing a message, this doesn't always come natural to everybody. It's something that you have to have intention on sharing. But for many Christians, though, when we try to talk to somebody about God, the gospel, we might end up looking kind of like this guy, a little bit nervous on the inside. And sometimes we feel like talking about Jesus, talking about the Bible is almost like speaking in a different language. You just can't seem to get the words right. You're not real sure where somebody else is in their understanding of the words, so you kind of hold back a little bit. And you're pretty sure they're confused, and you don't want to confuse them up anymore, so you just kind of stay in the background and stay quiet. And then you could be talking with a neighbor about sports, and that comes pretty easy. Talk about the weather and different things, and that comes easy. But as soon as something comes up about God, Jesus, or the gospel, we get nervous. And then it becomes like we're playing Chubby Bunny with about 10 marshmallows in our mouth. If you can relate to this at all, then today's passage, today's sermon, is going to be for you, and it's going to be for myself as well. We are studying the things that should encourage us. We're going to look at the same story from two different perspectives. Two different accounts that we're going to be looking at this morning. First, if you want, go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 5. And then later on, we'll transition to Luke chapter 8, but we'll start in Mark chapter 5. And again, we have two different perspectives of the same story. So Mark chapter 5, and we'll start in verses 1 through 5. Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. It says, Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he had come out of the boat immediately, there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one could bind him, not even with chains, himself with stones. Because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains, and in the tombs, crying out and cutting. There was this demon-possessed guy. He had a pass, but it didn't seem to bother Jesus, did it? This crazy man walking amongst the tombs, yelling, screaming, cutting on himself. Jesus still had pity on him, had mercy on him, had a message to share with this individual. Skip over to Luke chapter 8, and we'll see what happens next. Luke chapter 8, verses 28 and 29. Luke chapter 8, verses 28 and 29. Bernice, I figured a scary story would keep you awake. Luke chapter 8, verses 28 and 29. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him. And with a loud voice said, What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me. For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For it had often seized him, and he was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles. And he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. What was the man's question to Jesus? What was it? He asked, What do you want with me? What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? Similar guy looking like this. I don't know what he looked like, but I'm going to put it like this guy. Kind of scary looking. What if we were to step in to this guy's, I don't know if he had shoes on, his shoes for a little bit, and think for a moment that he fully expects Jesus to say or do something horrible to him. Here's a stranger that came from the other side there. He had been treated poorly by everybody in his region. That's all he knew. So he figured that Jesus was going to do the same. He says, "Don't torture me." His experience with people that's what was going to happen to him. He had been shackled, chained, tortured by pretty much everybody. And it says that he was often in chains. It was so bad that they'd often shackled him up. He didn't put himself in them. Others caught him, dragged him, put him on the ground, and shackled him. He's chained in the cemetery. How much clearly would this communicate to somebody that you don't want them around? You want them to be in the cemetery. You want them to pretty much die. You don't want them anywhere around you. Even more painful, though, is that his family must have allowed it to happen if he had any. If he had any friends or family, they took a seat back. This guy has nobody. He had disgust, he was isolated, he was fearful, rejection. And then on top of all that, he had several demons on the inside of him. "What do you want with me?" he says. "What do you, Jesus, Son of the Most High, want to do with a guy like me?" And he's prepared for the worst. But then we look at how Jesus responds to this crazy man in the cemetery. Verse 30, Luke chapter 8. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. Jesus responds with a simple question. What is your name? Jesus wanted to know this guy's name. Notice that the man is so overpowered, though, by these demons that he doesn't even really know his real name. He says, "My name is Legion." Can someone's life seem so hopeless that they forget their identity in God? And then they start to label themselves with, maybe what the world has labeled them with. Maybe the world has called people ugly. Maybe they've called you that you're worthless. You're alone. You're crazy. What do you think is going to happen with you? You're evil. But then the story continues. Luke chapter 8, verses 31 and 33, or through 33. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. Now a herd of many swine was feeding there on the mountain. So they begged him that he would permit them to enter them. And he permitted them. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the lake and drowned. Anything apart from Jesus ultimately is going to lead to death. The man gets to see right in front of him where the voices in his head was leading him. The demons were leading him to death. The truth is, Satan is doing the exact same thing with us today. Satan hates you and I. He hates that we are gathered here this morning worshiping God, that we're encouraging one another to stay on track. He hates that. John chapter 10, verse 10 says that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus has come to give you life, and life to the full. In that culture, another name for the water in a lake was the abyss, or death. So the man asks the question, Jesus, what who he was. Then he also wants him to help him. Jesus wants the crazy man in the cemetery to help him. Think about it. Everyone else wanted to bind him up, like I said earlier. Everybody else wanted to put him as far away from memory as they possibly could. But Jesus says, I need you. I need you to do some work here. He cared infinitely more about the man than the mess that he had just created. And we're going to see that he created quite a stir, Jesus did. And it definitely was messy. There wasn't just a herd of pigs drowning. It was somebody's livelihood at the bottom of the Sea of Galilee. To Jesus, this man's life was a bigger deal. Jesus showed that he even cares. He didn't even care if it was going to be messy to get him to where he needed to be. Even if it's not the popular decision, or that he might get some flack from it later on, Jesus knew that this man needed the gospel. He needed to hear Christ's word. Verse 34, same chapter, 34 and 35. He says, when those who fed them saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. That they went out to see what had happened and came to Jesus, and found the man from whom the demons had departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Remember that this whole scene is with a naked, crazy guy in the cemetery. We would probably have ran the other direction, wouldn't we? And we would have called the cops, pretty much 911. There's a crazy man in the cemetery. He has no clothes. I want you to take care of this, lock my door, get as far away from the situation as possible. Now, I'm not saying that in that situation you're supposed to go out and hug that person either. But Jesus definitely saw him differently. Jesus saw that in his heart. Jesus saw what was possible with this gentleman. The man didn't have any clothes, but now he does. Where do you think he got the clothes? Something that I guess I've never really thought of when I've read the story before, but it would have had to come from Jesus or the disciples, wouldn't it have? To give somebody the clothes off their back, possibly even. But they cared enough about this guy's reputation and how people saw him. The man asked, what do you want with me, Jesus, the Son of the Most High God? And Jesus says, well, I want to know your name. I want to help you. I want to see where life is going to take you once you get to know me. Jesus wanted a relationship with this gentleman. As the man sat at Jesus' feet, what do you think Jesus talked to him about? Another thing that you don't really think about when you're reading the story, or at least I never really did, but that's a great question to kind of think about, isn't it? Some of the discussions that people would have had in the Bible when they were sitting there talking to Jesus, what would have come up? What were they talking about? Now, I am just guessing, but don't you think the man somewhere in the discussion would have asked, who are you? Why are you caring about me? Why did you take the time to get to know me? Why did you ask me what my name was? Why did you sit down for one and talk to me? How can I be saved? Verse 36 and 37, Luke chapter 8. As the man sat at Jesus' feet, what do you think they talked about? A great question to ask anytime you're reading the Bible, and it tells us they were talking about this. This is not the scripture, by the way. I guess this is just me thinking out loud. Luke chapter 8, verses 36 and 37. Let's go ahead and read that. I don't know why I didn't have that up there. But let's go ahead and read that. And it'll take me a little bit of time to get it there. Luke chapter 8, verses 36 and 37. It says, those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. So it scared the people. It scared them so much that they wanted Jesus and his followers to get back in the boat. Wanted him to leave the situation. How crazy is that on a couple of levels? First, the people there were just not ready. Notice that Jesus didn't try to reason with them, win an argument. He didn't pull off some miracle and make demons go into them as punishment. He didn't have the pigs fly back out of the water and back on dry land. He just said, okay, and he left. But here's the even crazier implication. Jesus came all the way to the other side of the lake for just one guy. If you read the passage before this event takes place, we know that they had just come out of a nice little storm. And the disciples almost died in the storm on the way over. Jesus believed that this one demon-possessed guy was worth it. He said, you are worth it for me to come clear across the lake, almost get shipwrecked, to come see you. The person you've been working up the nerve to start up a spiritual conversation is worth it. The people that you're thinking about right now that you wanted to go out and talk to are worth it. Luke chapter 8, 38 and 39. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with them. But Jesus sent him away, saying, return to your own house and tell what great God has done for you. And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city what great things Jesus had done. First, Jesus' reaction kind of seems pretty cool, doesn't it? Here's this man wanting to follow Christ, wanting to be part of his little circle that is going around telling people about Christ. And Christ says, I need you to stay right here in this little town. You're not needed with me, you're needed right where you are. The guy going back into town has a really bad reputation. He was known as the crazy man in the cemetery, naked, running around. That was his reputation. Who's going to listen to a gentleman like that? But he doesn't, or at least it doesn't share with us in Scripture, he doesn't question. He goes back into the city, and what does he tell people? He tells everyone what Jesus had done for his life, how he had changed his life. This guy had been a Christian for 5.5 minutes maybe. Doesn't he need more training? He doesn't know enough to go out and share the gospel of Christ. He needs to go to preaching school. He needs to do this and he needs to do that. He needs to be in church for so long. He wasn't a Christian very long before Christ said, you need to go do what I've called you out to do. I take that to mean go tell your family. Go tell your friends. But this guy, this gentleman, took it a few steps further and he ends up telling the whole city. He tells the town what Jesus had done for him. He went all over the place and told people how much Jesus cared, what Jesus was doing. What is worked in our lives. We have nothing else to tell. We can tell our personal story. How Jesus is working in our lives, what He's been able to do, what He's helped us overcome. We can do that, can't we? That's a fairly easy task. That's the message that God is wanting us to tell other people. What He has done for you. Now, one last thing that is kind of cool about this story is let's go back a chapter, Mark chapter 7, verse 31. Mark chapter 7, verse 31. Mark chapter 7, verse 31. He says, again, departing from the region of Tyre and Sidon, He came through the midst of the region of Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. Jesus went back to this area. In Mark 8, we read that the feeding of the 4,000 happened in that same region. So it's a practical thinking that Jesus sending this crazed cemetery guy to go tell the town, tell the city. All He had done plays a part in what we see when Jesus comes back. Now, obviously, they probably heard some other things that Jesus had done or was doing. But do you think that man may have played a part in that big crowd? Jesus comes back to 4,000 men, probably 12 to 15,000 with the women and children included. But they were fed. And we think for a second about what that means. That means that He probably shared what Jesus was doing for him, what Jesus had done for him. He cleaned me up. He had made me somebody that I could go out and talk to people about. He probably shared the story with maybe some of the same people that cuffed him in the cemetery. Some of the ones that probably made fun of him. He probably talked to those people. The message was just too good not to share what Jesus had done. The mission seemed more to him than what his reputation was. We're made for a mission. What's our message that we're sharing? Now, I don't know how that all went down, but I can just picture as Jesus is preaching to these thousands of people in the crowd. Maybe the gentleman was even in that crowd. We don't know. The man makes eye contact with that crazy guy. The crowd is left. The man stays over and gives Jesus a give a little pat on the back. Well done. Good job. But you see, we have no idea the impact that we have on people around us. We don't know what they're capable of doing in their mission. But they need you and I to at least make note of it. Get to know them a little bit. Not everybody is as evil as we think they are. Maybe they just need a chance. Maybe they've been thinking about Christ, God, gospel. But they just need somebody to put a little faith in them. Let them know that they can do it through Christ. Jesus took the craziest, most insecure guy and used him to the utmost extremes. We tell ourselves, I can't do this. I'm shy. I can't talk with people about God, about His goodness. This is just not my thing. Well, let me ask you this. Are you known for running around the local cemetery and your neighborhood naked? Has anyone ever chained you up because you were so out of control? If not, then you have far less to overcome than that gentleman in our story this morning. Stop saying that you can't and say God can. What are you going to do to share with those around you? Are you going to tell them how God changed your life? How God can change their life? Are you going to share with them how life has been just a bit brighter when you started following Christ yourself? Knowing that there's a Father who loves them that's going to look after them when times are and do get tough. Will you let someone know who has drifted away that it's never too late to come back? Jesus still wants to use you even though you've spit on him, turned your back on him, whatever. He still wants you to come back. You see, that's our mission. The first week that we started this series, I talked about a movie, Hacksaw Ridge, and how the main character was a medic and he prayed, "Please, Lord, let me help just one more." And we said that if we could all have that attitude with Christ in our Christian mission, please, Lord, let me just help. Let me just bring you one more person. How the world would change if we just asked that question. This morning, maybe you're here and life has got you down. Maybe you've kind of struggled on that mission of sharing the goodness of God, not telling others that this is what He's done in my life, sharing the personal stories to those around us that we love, that we care about. Maybe you're here this morning and you've not yet put Christ on baptism, and you need to do so before it's eternally too late. You can make that decision this morning as we stand and as we sing.
Love you, O Lord.